So it's been a while and I'm really sorry again not keeping up to this video diary of my experience. Um, I did start school, so that's probably another reason that I haven't had too much time to focus on this, but I'm writing a speech right now for Relay for Life and I'm reading it out to probably 1,000 or so people on September 30th, so it kind of reminded me of how I coped with things and my experience. So it reminded me to make videos as well. Um, yeah, after the Carnival for the Cure, I had to go to Calgary. So 2 days later was when I was going to Calgary. And I think that was our initial visit. So we were just meeting my doctors, getting ready because my stem cell transplant was probably 2 weeks away. It was June 17th. And the Carnival for the Cure was June 3rd. So, yeah, I met my doctors. My doctor was Dr. Shafee at the Tom Baker Cancer Center in Calgary, and she is awesome. Tried to visit her a few months ago, like back in June, but she wasn't there, and I forgot that it was a Saturday and no one works on Saturdays. So, um, yeah, so the initial visit, they told me what was going to happen, and they showed me the suite that we were going to be living in for the 3 months I was there. It was just right across the street from the hospital, and I just remember it was so funny because my whole family was there, and we were staying at Motel Way or whatever. That's right on Trans Canada Highway number 1 in Calgary, and yeah, we were supposed to go to this cancer awareness meeting, and I really wanted to go to the zoo, so I I was just so out of it, and my brother and my sisters, I guess they were trying to like trick me because I thought we were going to Pete's Drive-In, and we ended up in the zoo parking lot, and then they went and got me a wheelchair and it said Calgary Zoo on it, and I still didn't know where we were, so cuz I was like really high on every kind of drug you can imagine. And so I looked at the wheelchair and I just said to my brother, "You ran all the way to the zoo to get me a wheelchair?" And they just laughed because I still didn't clue in, and I guess that's just how out of it I actually was. So that's one of the happier times before my transplant. Um, when I was admitted into the hospital at the U of A, I was actually an outpatient, and like because I was in remission, I was feeling good. I was able to stay in the suite instead of in the hospital. But after about a week of getting really, really hard chemo, like all the liquid chemos, methotrexate, and I can't even remember any of them, but they're like yellow, red, like the worst chemos you can get. And I just, after about a week, I had to finally become an inpatient because things were getting so like hard for me to do. Like I couldn't even walk, and I was just so sick all the time. So it was overwhelming for me to go back and forth to the hospital. And when I was an inpatient, it was hard because I couldn't sleep at all. I'm sorry, I'm so emotional. I couldn't sleep, and I'd be up till about 4 in the morning every day, and of course no one's gonna stay with me that late because I always told them to go home. I didn't want people to stay and have to deal with like me not being able to sleep just because I was so uncomfortable. And I just remember one nurse. I don't even remember her name, but she was so nice to me. She'd come in every time she worked, and she would always give me like reasons to not think the worst of my situation. She would say, "Oh, you're so young. You don't this isn't the end of your life. This is just the start of your life." Like, and I remember she would always say, "Oh, I'm coming back tomorrow," or "I'm coming back in 2 days," and the one time she actually was so sick that she wasn't allowed in, because cancer patients are not allowed to be around sick people. So she wasn't allowed to come back to work, and she told me that she was, but she actually had her boyfriend bring in magazines and books for me to read, and like girly magazines, and she wrote me a card and was just like, "I'm so sorry, I thought I was gonna be here, but I'm actually really sick, so I'll see you when I get back and when I'm better." Just, those are the people that helped me through what I went through. There's the one in a million like nurses that I encountered was just helped me so much. So I was in the hospital probably a week before my stem cell transplant, and uh, Angie, she was actually getting the injections a few days beforehand to ready her bone marrow or stem cells for harvesting, and I do remember what happened that day. It wasn't, I don't really know how to explain it without being like overly dramatic, but I don't mean it to be. It's just what happened. Like the stem cells, they look like V8 juice. I think I have pictures of them, and it actually I had V8 in a can on my little table, my little side table. And I actually got a picture that I put the can up to the stem cells, and it was actually really funny because it looked exactly like it. Like there was a very big similarity. It didn't look exactly like blood. It was lighter, more pinkish in color, but had the consistency of V8 or like clamato juice or something. It was really strange, but she was a perfect match to me. So I thought that I would be fine, but I guess my reaction to like just getting the infusion of stem cells was so bad, and I started getting really bad convulsions and an allergic reaction very, very quickly. Like my skin turned like red in some spots. And I don't remember this, but Angie told me that like I actually flatlined for a few seconds because like I passed out. Obviously, that's why I don't remember it, but yeah, I didn't know that. So I was dead for a few seconds, which is news to me just as much as it is to anyone that I tell. So that's the part that I didn't want to be overly dramatic about. Anyways, yeah. So I was good after a few hours. They gave me a lot of like antihistamines that would help with like my reactions, and a lot of drugs to like put me out of my pain. But I was just like, I just received full body radiation, 2 rounds of full body radiation actually, just to kill all my cells, because that's what they have to do for stem cell transplants. They have to kill all the cancerous cells, and they can't really just target cancer cells, so they kill everything in your body. So I was bald as a baby, and I just, the next few weeks after my transplant were horrible. Like, they weren't as bad as my chemo the first time because I knew what I was getting into. I knew what I had to do to stay on top of things. I remember the first time I had chemo, the few months before that when I was diagnosed, they told me about mouth sores, but I didn't understand the concept of them, and mine were horrible. And I tried to do the mouth washes, but I got them anyways. Most cancer patients will get them no matter what they do, and that was the case for after my stem cell transplant as well. But it was so much worse. I couldn't even drink any water, so they actually had to give me a feeding tube, which was, I can say, by far the most horrible experience ever. Worse than like my biopsies, worse than I don't know, getting the stem cells, blood transfusions, needles, it's worse than all of that. Like, if anyone can, I can't even express how bad it was. Like, they they shove a tube up your nose, and then they have to hit the back of your throat, and it actually goes all the way down into your stomach, but it just has to be right before the sphincter in your stomach. It has to go right inside of it so that when your stomach closes, it actually is still inside your stomach. So it was horrible, because imagine sticking something all the way up your nose. It's just not, I can't even think of it right now. But a few hours after they gave me my first feeding tube, I actually threw it up because I didn't put it deep enough. Like, it was just bothering me a lot, so I was throwing up constantly anyways because of all the chemo, so I threw it up. So it was like in my nose and coming out of my mouth. It was just the weirdest thing in the world. I wish I had gotten a picture of it. But so they put a second one in, which was the second most horrible experience I've ever had. And this time it stayed in. It stayed in for about a week because my mouth sores were that bad. And I just remember they'd like put some really, really gross stuff. Like, what is it called? That equate? That chocolate milky stuff that has protein in it that old people think is delicious. And so that would be in my stomach, and sometimes it would come up the tube because it's like your stomach acid rises, right? So I just remember the smell was horrible. Like, it was, yeah, it was not a good smell because I could always smell my stomach acid. But I did my mouthwashes every day because that's really, like, the only thing that I could do to help prevent what, like, or help my mouth sores go away. So eventually they were gone, and like all the nurses said I was really good at staying on top of my mouthwashes and stuff because I just didn't want to go through what I went through at the U of A hospital. So I don't even, there's not much more that I remember. I made hemp bracelets for like my whole family, and I gave them to them at Christmas with cards this past Christmas. So yeah, that was a summary of my time in the hospital. I tried to walk a lot, like I'd take my machine and walk because I didn't get bed sores per se when I was at the U of A, but I did like not move for about 2 weeks on end, so I just didn't want to be in that position again. And there's this wall on at the Tom Baker Cancer Center. It's actually in the hospital part. It's not in the cancer center. It's actually the fourth floor, I believe. So the top floor of the hospital. And there's this wall, and there's people that have been through cancer and survived, and they're living their lives normally. And I would go to that wall every day and read what the people said. They wrote letters back to the ward and to their doctors, and they gave pictures. And they've come so far. And I just can't wait for this to be done. Like, I can't wait to be one of those people who is able to write a letter saying that everything's perfect and they're able to live their lives again without having this worry in the back of their mind. I went there every single day. Because the one thing I want is to be able to write a letter and to have it shown there, to show my strength and what I've overcome. But hopefully one day soon I'll be able to do that.